Greetings, beloved. We're so excited to have you all here today with us. This is your host, Anthony Powers. Welcome this evening to Togetherness Media. We have an amazing show today. All right, so today we have, first of all, let's talk about who we have with us. We have the delightful, we have the insightful, we have the beautiful, we have the empathetic, we have the charismatic Dr. Foojan Zeine with us today.
Hello, it's so nice to see you. My God, you talk about me, and every moment I'm like, oh my God. So thank you for those kind words and generous ones.
Oh, all true words. All right, so today we're having a conversation about something, a topic that I think is really not spoken about enough, and it's about juvenile or originated PTSD and how it affects adults. Um, and um, and like that's like people speak about PTSD amongst soldiers and amongst other things, and I was just thinking, I was like this, I thought for a while, like I grew up in a neighborhood. When I grew up, it was the number one murder per capita in the entire United States, my zip code, during the Uzi generation. And almost every party I went to growing up ended up with shootings. Ended with shootings, people getting shot up. Like I'd seen multiple people shot my life growing up as a kid. You had to dodge gunfire all the time as a kid. And people talk about war zones and how soldiers come back. But what about people and children who grew up in these type of environments where there's violence and there's other issues, and how does that affect them as adults?
Well, when you're looking at a human being brain, it is developing all the way to age 25, and obviously it continues to develop. But the major aspect of the frontal lobe that is being developed in through the teen years, especially even if you have had an amazing childhood and all of the neurosynapses have done beautifully, around age 12 and 13 our brain goes through a pruning concept, which, you know, how like roses, you prune them in the winter time so they bloom exponentially. That's exactly what happens to human brain around teenage years. So you can imagine as uh, many of the skills have been pruned and now it's ready to exponentially grow and create those neural synapses. What happens that when there is a halt in there because of a trauma, obviously the way that those neural synapses grow is through fear, survival instinct, and the concept of fear, shame, anger, rage. A lot of those emotions gets solidify as a base, as a default position of a human being way of thinking and feeling. And you can imagine that when a system has been traumatized, there's three things that happen. You at the time at the place of danger, we originally either fight or flight or freeze. Many of the aspects of trauma is because we freeze. We don't have the ability to fight back. Most people who have the ability to fight back, they're not traumatized. The ones that who run away, they still feel power. The ones who freeze at that moment are completely powerless, and that's how
Hmm.
trauma stays in the system. And then maybe afterward, as a coping mechanism, they will, feel like, okay, if this is the way I can be powerful, which is do the same thing and go and get a gun and shoot somebody else. And then that part of them as a coping mechanism stays. Now, either the coping mechanism becomes, in a way, Anthony, that I don't trust anybody and I always have to live my life on a hyper vigilant level and defensive level, which sucks a lot of energy and you're constantly living heightened anxiety. Or that you take that hypervigilance and put it into anger and destructiveness, which, it takes you to a life of constant drama and more trauma, legal issues, and, destruction of yourself, your own life, and other people's life. So it has a direct correlation about when a teenager has been traumatized as they grow and move forward. Also, when teens have become traumatized because of the overwhelming aspect of emotions that is intolerable, they usually go towards some another way of destructive method and numbing devices in order to calm themselves down. So they go into drinking alcohol or using marijuana or other type of drugs or pills in order to calm down themselves. And then that's many times where the concept of addiction also starts in their life, and they use it as calming themselves down, but ultimately becomes a prison for themselves, where now they're destroying their life as they're growing up.
Yeah, interestingly enough, I didn't realize it until later. I think that's one reason I was never much of a drinker, because I've always because of that I always and then later on in college I threw all the parties, and so I was never able to get drink because I was always had to be keep make sure everything was taken care of. But I think but having that as a kid made me not really want to drink too much at social events because I always felt like I always have to be ready to move into superhero mode and protector mode and need be to protect those around me and to make sure that to make sure that everybody's okay. That's something that I've always kind of I felt, but I and I think that's a direct correlation from being in an experience where I always had to have my wits about me when I was at
Yeah.
functions as a child.
Yes.
Um,
I've worked with many of the teens when I worked in the foster care system, and I also worked with Optimist Youth, which I worked with a lot of the teens in group homes, which due to some violence, they went to juvenile hall, and after juvenile hall, they came to group homes, and I was blessed to be a therapist there. And I remember talking to many of the teens where, such as a place you were talking about, that at any point they wanted to walk outside, they had to constantly be looking around. And every moment that they were walking outside, they were waiting to be killed, waiting to be killed. And that type of an anxiety and living in that type of anxiety drains you after a while. And then the other part was the survival guilt. That every day that he wasn't killed, he felt a guilt about all the friends and everybody else in that arena who did die. And he had to live with not only this tremendous amount of anxiety, but also the guilt and the depression that he was going through.
mm,
And teen years, Anthony, are the years that we're finding our strength and moving and looking at the world and building a future. And sometimes this type of traumas does not allow, like we are so, every part of us that has any ounce of energy is going for survival, and you have
yeah,
no other energy to be able to expand, look, and even look at the horizon. People who are
yeah.
lucky, they come out of these type of neighborhoods, or they come out of the trauma, and finally they go into a safe place where their energy can actually look, and they might have role models that holds them into a different standard and takes them
Yeah.
to a different place.
Yeah, I think one of the things that really helped me come out of those situations, there's a couple of things. One thing, I was in a very prayerful house, and my grandmother actually kept foster kids too, and she was like the mother of the community. And if somebody, people were trying to kill you, if you got to my house, if you got to my yard, it was seen as a sanctuary zone. So people would come to our house, run to our house if somebody was trying to kill them, so that they wouldn't get killed. And also, I just always had such a high sense of self-destiny that even during those situations, I never believed I was going to die, just because I always believed that my self destiny and what God and the universe had planned for me was greater than anything that man had planned for me. Um, can we talk a little bit about some of the other ways? We spoke about violence, gun violence. Are there other ways that teenagers get traumatized, PTSD, that can affect them as adults?
Absolutely. One of the biggest trauma that happens for teens is the parental divorce, which I usually tell my clients, if you want to get divorced, please do it before your kids get to a teen place, or do it after. Like if your kids are becoming teen, just hang in there until they're out of the house, because those years are the hardest years. Like if Anthony, if all life is well, everything out there is well, teen years are crisis oriented internally, just on a
Yeah.
normal basis. Now imagine that
Yeah.
the internal aspect is going through a crisis, and the ups and downs and the hormones and all the emotions that are coming out. You can't even figure out why the hell you're upset or you're not. And you're dealing with all of these bodily changes that are happening and identity changes, and you're trying to be yourself and no longer your parents, and you're like, whatever they say is like, you go into their face and like, no, I got to figure out mine. And this is how you're trying to figure this out. And imagine the structure of a family that is supposed to be like the foundation where you could actually hold your footing and to be able to feel solid so that you could go through all of this, is shaky. And then if it's a kind of like a hostile type of a divorce, and the parents actually keep the teen in between and they take him back and forth, that by itself also becomes one of the the concept of trauma for them. And obviously that type of a trauma not only affects their identity, but also affects them in their romantic relationship and relational skills in the future. So that's another type of trauma that happens for teens.
Yeah. And those hormone monsters do make life hard as a teen already. Like when the hormone monsters attack, yeah, it makes it difficult. What are some of the ways that people can deal with these PTSDs, with these traumas? Because, like you said, it often ends up creating a cycle of 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 whatever type of trauma affected them. It's really hard for a lot of people to escape the cycles in a healthy manner, besides using abusive coping mechanisms. What are some of the ways that people can cope with these things and deal with these things in a healthy way?
Sure. Before I say that to you, this also showed up for me that we talked about the gun violence, but there's also other types of bullying that happens consistently. It's cyber bullying. There's a lot of sexual bullying that happens. There's a lot that's going on in that way where they also get traumatized. I have girls who are persuaded by guys to show their body parts, naked body parts, and they persuade them to do that, and then they blackmail them, and then everybody else now in the junior high or high school starts calling them mad names and having their picture go, although they had promised I wouldn't. So there's a lot of trauma that also gets created in that way. There's also the
Yeah.
next trauma, which happens with the
Um,
body figures, of shaming somebody for their body, because obviously teens, their bodies are changing, their voice is changing, and they're very uncomfortable in their body, and body shaming happens a lot. And that's why there's a lot of eating disorder that is happening
yeah.
for the teenagers at this time. So you can see all of those also. You want to say something before I go into what do we do?
Yes, please. So, I was just thinking, when you were talking about the sexual pressure that teenagers today have. Like I have a friend who, um, sometimes she like early she experimented with pills when she was early, but like oftentimes when she was younger, like she just ended up caving into pressure to have sex. Oftentimes, when she was younger as a teen, instead of it, because like it made it she was it was easier to cave in and just deal with the shame and deal with the discomfort than to say no sometimes. And I've seen that affect that friend in their adult life, and the way that they deal with and the way that they deal with their relationships with men and with women. Like and the body dysmorphia is like a huge issue that so many young people deal with even more. And as the standard of beauty is constantly increased in all the images and all of everything in Hollywood. Like for instance, like I was like watching a movie from the '80s, and like where as a natural figure, like with like a little bit of pudge, like a character, like an actress wouldn't be like that same role would have been, she would have had to have a six pack to play the exact same role in today's day. Like how hard is the body dysmorphia based on what's going on with society, with the images that are being portrayed?
It has a lot to do with that. And, again, we're trying to find our identity, and teen years are where we find our identity is our peers. They are the most important group in our life. And wanting to have a sense of belonging and for them to like us, it's very important. Now, it is also the years that we actually are getting attracted in a sexual way. So the heterosexuals, obviously, they want full on attraction from the other gender, and homosexuals want that from the same gender. So I've seen even this type of a body dysphoric and the issues of eating disorders with gay boys, not so much with gay girls, but gay boys, which is, looking good and having a six pack and all of that now becomes very important. So you've got two different types of pressure in order to be looking good and wanting to be part of the tribe and wanting to be someone who's really great. So it puts a lot of pressure on them. At this
Mhm.
point, I have clients who one of them is a heterosexual girl, another one is a homosexual boy. They're both going through eating disorders, and it's pretty much having to do not with the sense of control, but really wanting to look good in order to get the attraction. And there's a high level of pressure in the
Yeah.
teen world, especially social media. Because, in social media, the only thing you show is my greatness, like I'm the greatest, and that, all the poses
Mhm.
and places you go. Sometimes, even for attention, they'll show up there when we call, like, being emo, being emo, and then, like, doing the sad faces a couple of times. But most of them, the girls are going like this and showing up their body, and the boys are, doing the, showing off their body. So those are the things we see. They're having fun, they're enjoying. And every time these teens see another person in Insta or Pinterest or TikTok or any of those, now it's more like, oh, I got to up the game and up the game because I have to also be seen. And that becomes another level of pressure because they're not
Yeah.
seeing the depression and the loneliness and the pressure that shows up and the anxiety. They're just seeing these pictures and thinking, oh my God, the world is having a ball, and what's going on with me sitting here isolated in my room, which is not
And so many
accurate.
people, yeah. And the external value instead of the internal value that so many, like especially that so many people have based on the external factors. I really want to get have a chance for you to get to some of the solutions before our time is up today. Like we're I know you're a very solution oriented person, and so I'd love for you to give a couple of solutions for our viewers.
Therapy, 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 therapy. Because I know that it is so important for the teen to gain skills. For the parents who don't want their teen to go, or the teen is not willing to go, I really suggest for them to start learning about their teen. There's an amazing book called Brainstorm by Daniel Siegel. It has one of the latest. Daniel Siegel is a UCLA psychiatrist and a neuroscientist. He is amazing, and he puts in this all of the latest research about the brain of a teenager. And the book is written in a way that the teens and their parents can work together. And there's a lot of exercises in there that are really great. The teen parenting is very different when your children were younger. You have to have completely a different style of parenting. Go to podcasts, go learn in how to parent your teen. If you don't know how to, get a therapist who's, family therapist who knows how to support you and your teen moving forward. Because you have to know how to talk to a teen so that the kind of like the delusional belief systems that at that point they take in and make it personal for them, how to handle that, and then how to handle it with their friends. The world of a teen is very different than an adult, and every generation is change. Parents
Yes.
need to learn. They can't just say, oh, we did this when we were a teen. You didn't have these pressures when you were a teen. Your teen does. Your teen has to now have a pressure of a gun coming to the school and how they're going to handle it, of the next person who's going to tell them they have to be high or they're not going to be a part of their group. There's so much pressure in every aspect. The sexual aspect we were talking about, most of the parents in the last decade didn't have to go through any of these concepts. So you have to be up to the moment with what's going on
Yeah.
out there,
Yeah.
and
To
be
be
able,
kind.
yeah, to support. The other part is emotional regulation. And that's why I said therapy. Emotions are at its extreme in this age. And the
Mm.
learning the skills of regulating it. What do I do when I get angry? What do I do when I get anxious? What do I do when I'm really sad? What do I do when I want to kill you, but I shouldn't? So all of those are the part that I got to learn how to regulate myself and calm down,
Okay.
and then bring the thinking forward into it. Teen brain cannot see the future beyond a couple of weeks. So they make impulsive decision, not because they're bad. It's just, it is the way that the development of the brain is that
Yeah.
at that moment. So it takes a lot for the parents to sit down and create those boundaries, look at and teach them how to do critical thinking when they're making decisions for their future. Those are all some of the simple ways that I can tell you.
Okay, beautiful. We're going to have to do an entire show on the difference between raising a child and raising a teenager soon. I think that would be a really interesting topic. Thank you much, so very much for your insight today and for your wisdom and for your caring. And I wish you the most wonderful weekends.
Thank you. It was a joy to be with you, and see you next week.
See you next week. This is Anthony Powers. That was Dr. Foojan Zeine. Coming up, woo! We got my man, Mr. Jason Farnham, is gonna do an amazing show. We gonna rock some music for y'all. He's gonna talk to y'all. He's gonna do his thing. If y'all haven't seen my man Jason Farnham sing and play, y'all are in for an absolute treat. This is Anthony Powers.